Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live session with Women on Boards. I'm Claire Braun, the CEO and Executive Director of Women on Boards, and it's great to have you along today. Today, we're talking about equipping women into ASX board roles. There are more than 2,200 companies listed on the ASX, which is a lot. Total market cap of more than 3.2 trillion, putting it in the top 20 stock exchanges in the world. For many women, achieving an ASX board has been a cherished dream, one that the WOBSX program has enabled many women to achieve across its 7-year history. In 2026, WOB will be offering the WOBSX program in multiple cities. We're delighted that we have experienced ASX Chair and Non-Executive Director, Patricia McKenzie, who's going to be leading the Sydney Syndicate. Hello, Patricia.
Good morning, Claire. Well, good afternoon by now.
It is a bit. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, went to school, career, children, challenges, and most importantly, how you came to serve on boards?
Yes, sure. So I've always lived in Sydney. I'm a Sydney girl, went to school in Manly, studied law at Sydney University. When the cohort was less than 10% women when we started, and a lot less when we finished. So it was a long time ago. I'm really pleased that things have changed on that. My career started at AGL. Straight out of university, ended up chairing the company when I came back, which didn't seem even remotely possible when I first joined. But that was my first job. Joined the energy industry thinking this is a utility backwater. I'll stay for a year, get some experience and get out of here. Turned out that I really enjoyed being part of an executive team, and the energy industry has turned out to be very dynamic. It never has been the same. And so after some 45 years in energy, I can't say I've ever been bored. I am married with 3 children. My eldest daughter, Kate, has Down syndrome. And so that was one of my challenges in starting to become a director. I moved into a director career after I'd been CEO of Gas Market Company, which introduced competition into the gas industry in New South Wales and the ACT. I moved into a non-executive career when we formed the Australian Energy Market Operator, and so I moved on to that board. I had done quite a few charitable boards prior to that. And since then, I have chaired 7 companies, and I have been a director on quite a few more. Many of them in the energy industry, since, of course, that's where my expertise lies. But I've been able to also expand into health companies and into, for example, I chaired Health Direct Australia, which was a really interesting role, and to infrastructure companies. So I have chaired NSW Ports, which owns Botany and Port Kembla, and I chaired Sydney Desalination Plant, which is a large infrastructure play, and not the white elephant you might think it is. It runs every day. So that enabled me to generalise my director skills and my chair skills.
Thank you. The ASX is a bit stagnant in terms of listings. There's been very little difference in the top 10 companies by market cap today compared with 30 years ago, which, and our ASX, of course, remains anchored at the moment in financials, resources, and infrastructure. And this is actually in stark contrast to the US as a good case study, where strong venture capital, risk-tolerant investors, and the elite research university have really changed the face of the top end of the S&P, from oil, industrials and consumer brands to the tech and innovation giants that we see flexing their muscles on a global scale now. So tell me, as a former chair and non-executive director of ASX listed companies, what are the benefits of having companies owned and controlled by shareholders rather than private investors or government?
Well, the benefits of public listing are different for the different stakeholders. So if you look at it from a company's point of view, listing allows access to raise capital from a wide base of shareholders, which include institutional and superannuation funds and retail investors. And that allows the company to pursue its strategy with less reliance on debt. which I think is a really important factor, particularly if you're in a growth phase or if you're an innovative company, you're in tech. And as we are slowly starting to change the nature of the ASX, we'll see more of those tech and innovative companies starting to come along. It also, in my experience, means that the company has a lower cost of capital, which is a crucial factor when you're looking at capital management. And as a board of directors, you have the opportunity to include in your remuneration policies the allocation of shares for reward. And so that helps to align the interests of management and the company to your shareholders. Then from a shareholder's perspective, it allows retail investors and institutional investors the opportunity to share in corporate success and perhaps to contribute to or to support causes that they feel strongly about. And I found that in the energy transition, that there were conviction shareholders there who were really seeking to support that transition. So that opportunity is underpinned by those very strict governance rules, accountability and transparency rules that you have in a listed company, which you can't get in private entities or with government, of course. I also think it's very important for the superannuation companies to have access to liquid assets. They have so much money that they need to be investing. And we've seen a massive rise in both the investment and the influence of superannuation companies in the ASX company listing space. I also think that the democratisation of returns for the retail investors are very important here. That was demonstrated to me at APA, where we went to an AGM with a hugely advantageous takeover offer, and retail shareholder, one after the other, stood up and said, I don't want that. I want to be a part of APA. Now, I think the extraordinary TSR probably helped with that, but it illustrates the point that this is the only opportunity for your average mum and dad or your small superannuation company to invest in those large organisations and share in their success, one would hope. So ownership by private equity, it does not have the transparency or the accountability or the corporate governance requirements applicable to a listed entity, and I've chaired several private equity companies. But many of those assets are strategic assets of the nation, and so it's not always in the best interest of the nation for the assets to be in private hands. We don't really see what's going on. And when it comes to government ownership, of course that has a political imperative that you are not going to see in listed companies. Listed companies are going to respond to government policy, but that's a different issue to a political imperative. And the governance in the listed entities is really focused on their wide shareholder base and the duties you have to respond to that base.
Thank you. That's a wonderful explanation. So given that the ASX absolutely matters, do ASX boards look for a certain type of person to serve on them?
Look, I think the days of pale, male and stale are well behind us, and that boards are really looking now to find the best person to bring the skill set that would enhance that board. So gender representation is very important, and it's really a factor in decisions now. And I think, WOB has had a role in ensuring that that's happened. Of course, the style of the director is going to be really important, and the fit of that person with the current board. So, you are going to look to someone who is going to enhance your board and hopefully, ask all the right questions and do the right thing for the company. But I think in addition to female directors, boards are now starting to look at cultural diversity, and the breadth of thinking and the experience that women and different cultural backgrounds brings to the board is now, I believe, valued with the expansion of that director pool. So the answer is, I don't think they're looking for a certain type. I think they're looking for a skill set, and they're looking for the right person to work with that board and with that management team.
So do any particular industries or sectors that you might have worked across give you a leg up to serving on ASX boards, or is it a broad diversity of business experience and expertise really ideal for ASX boards?
So I think the experience that leads to you serving on an ASX board or getting that first role really depends on what skill that board is looking for at that time. Every board has its skills matrix. They're generally in the annual report. And that's your first port of call when you start to look for a new director to join the board. You know, obviously boards are looking for people capable of chairing their Audit Risk Committee or their REM committee for anyone brave enough to take that role on. So a background in accounting is a respected skill. If that board is in a large capital raising cycle, a finance background may be what they're looking for. Obviously, industry expertise is important, but that's not necessarily specific industry expertise for that business. But you know, for example, infrastructure is a very wide, broad church, and so for me, having an energy background, I moved into other large infrastructure companies, and the skills were transferable. Might be international experience. That's sort of, I've often seen that on my boards, that we're looking for perhaps opportunities overseas, and so someone who's lived and worked in that overseas set can be really what you're targeting at that point. So the answer is there's no one rule for getting yourself onto an ASX board or for making you successful in that role. It's important to understand what that board is looking for in a director, and then to tailor your CV to demonstrate what you bring to the table in response to that.
Thank you. You kindly agreed to chair WOBSX Sydney in 2026. So what made you agree to my request, which we're very grateful for? Patricia, thank you.
So I am one of only 14 women to have chaired an ASX 100 board. That statistic has to change. And so I'm delighted to work with the next generation of ASX directors, female directors, to help them to obtain the skills that they will need to obtain a role on a listed company, and importantly, to be successful once they have that role. So we've developed a program that I think answers the questions I had when I was first joining an ASX company, and answers the questions I didn't know I should have been asking, but now I know. So I want to bring that expertise of now, you know, some 20 years as a director, to help that next generation to access and to be successful in the ASX and the large private equity companies as well, because I think you should broaden your view. I know ASX is often considered the goal, but the large private equity companies, they can be really interesting. The assets are very good and very valuable, and so that should also be a goal. So I'm really looking forward to working with the next cohort of ASX and private equity directors.
And we're absolutely delighted to have you. So thank you very much for joining me today. Anyone who is interested in the WOBSX program and specifically in applying for the Sydney Syndicate, you do not have to be from Sydney or even from New South Wales. If you want to come and work with Patricia, you can come in from anywhere. We have had people fly in from Western Australia for previous syndicates. There will be syndicates based out of Brisbane and Melbourne in 2026 as well, so more coming on that soon. The program is by expression of interest. It is by application. You do have to be ready for the program. It's pretty easy to put in an expression of interest. Go to the website, womenonboards.net, follow the links to program and choose WOBSX. Once again, many thanks, Patricia, for joining me today, and I'm really looking forward to the program in 2026 also.
Thanks, Kate.